Okay, find a way for those who are watching from Facebook. Right here, we should have come up with a point where you can tune into a video that picks up from right here, second half of the program. Kurdish fighters in northern Iraq say they are gaining ground against the forces of Islamic State in the area. The Peshmerga fighters claim to have taken back 3 villages from the Islamist extremist militants with the help of Iraqi warplanes. Jim Muir reports from Bakarta, where other Kurdish fighters have recaptured territory from Islamic State.
Quiet victory celebrations in the town of Bakarta. The Kurds recaptured it from the Islamic State militants at the weekend after a short, sharp battle. Occasional artillery blasts still make you jump, but the fire seems to be only outgoing. From the new front line a bit further south, we could see the nearby villages the Islamists still control. The Kurds say they'll stop here, though, because those villages are Arab, not Kurdish. Here in northern Iraq, the Kurds are showing that, in fact, the Islamic State fighters are not invincible. This hilltop position, until just a couple of days ago, was firmly in the hands of ISIS, the Islamic State radicals. Now, the Kurds have pushed them out, this time without help from American air power. The fact that the Kurds didn't need American air support to cover this advance seems to reflect a growing faith in their own capabilities. So you are confident that ISIS cannot come back again, cannot return?
Yeah, I'm confident because now we know Daesh forces, because they very weak against us. They couldn't fighting us, and now we using a lot of tactics against them.
The black flag of the Islamic State has been brought down here, but it's a small beginning to a massive task. Jim Muir, BBC News at Bakarta, northern Iraq.
Friends, next we'll go to news about Russia and Ukraine. Russia aid convoy crosses into Ukraine. This video from Friday's news.
Yes, so what happened this morning was that the Russian Foreign Ministry, before the truck started moving, put out a statement saying that they simply weren't prepared to wait any longer. They said that all the excuses for delaying the delivery of aid to people in an area of a humanitarian catastrophe have been exhausted, and then warned that the responsibility for the possible consequences of an act of provocation against the convoy would lie on those who are prepared to continue to sacrifice people's lives for the sake of their ambitions. So a warning there that consequences may follow if the convoy is attacked. It looks, from talking to witnesses down on the border, as if around 70 trucks have now physically entered Ukraine. That's obviously not the whole 200-plus convoy, but a very sizable chunk of that convoy is now sitting on the other side of the Ukrainian border post, having physically driven.
Okay, now that was news from Friday. After they went in, they sat there for a while. Then, next day, on the Sabbath, Saturday, all trucks belonging to a Russian aid convoy that traveled to the rebel-held eastern Ukraine on Friday, as of Saturday, returned to Russia. More than 200 trucks drove to Luhansk on Friday without permission from the Ukrainian government after Russia said it was tired of waiting for clearance. It comes as German Chancellor Angela Merkel, I believe you may see her in this video, and I want to show you this video from Saturday, after Angela Merkel arrived in Kiev for talks with Ukraine's President Petro Poroshenko. Mike Wooldridge has this report. Again, this report is from Saturday.
Trucks crossing back from Ukraine into Russia, leaving behind them aid supplies delivered to the rebel-held east without permission from the Ukraine government, and anger in western capitals. The convoy had been a focus of controversy for days, remaining inside Russia as suspicions were first raised about what was in the trucks. Was it only water, food and other relief supplies, as Moscow insisted? Or was the aid a cover for support for the struggling rebels? Or, as Kiev suggested, the prelude to an actual Russian incursion of some kind? Then, after much toing and froing over inspection of the trucks, the convoy simply moved off into Ukraine and to the city of Luhansk, which is held by separatists but encircled by Ukraine government forces, with power and water supplies cut off. As supplies were unloaded, Western governments joined Kiev in insisting that the operation was illegal and demanding that the trucks be withdrawn. That particular crisis appearing to subside as Chancellor Merkel held talks in Kiev with President Poroshenko. She called for tighter control of the Ukraine-Russia border and said it would take both countries to bring peace to eastern Ukraine, and she hoped that a planned meeting in the coming week between President Putin and Mr. Poroshenko would be successful. But this, the aftermath of heavy shelling by Ukraine government forces in the main separatist stronghold Donetsk, only hours before the German Chancellor's arrival in Kiev. Diplomacy still challenged on all fronts. Mike Aldridge, BBC News.
Friends, I wanted you to see how the German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, was there in the Ukraine in that video from Saturday's news. And from today's news, related to this now, Russia's foreign minister has confirmed that Moscow, listen to this, friends, will send another aid convoy to eastern Ukraine in the next few days. Sergei Lavrov said the humanitarian situation in the rebel-held areas was deteriorating and desperate. Ukraine did not authorize the first convoy, as you know, which returned to Russia at the weekend, as we just showed you in the video. It returned on Saturday, fearing it carried military equipment for pro-Russia separatists. David Stern reports from Kiev.
We haven't heard from the Ukrainian officials, but it follows to say that that there is a very good chance that there could be controversy around this convoy as well. The fact that Russia sent in its trucks the last time unilaterally, that there were many questions about the trucks themselves, why a number of them seem to be, for the most part, empty, as well as the accusations by the Ukrainian officials and Western officials. Also, it remains to be heard what the Red Cross's reaction is, given that the Russians were supposed to conduct this convoy under the supervision of the Red Cross. Having gone in unilaterally, they did it without the Red Cross's control there as well. So it will obviously be a point of discussion whether we will see the same level of controversy or perhaps a bit more cooperation among the sides this time. That will be clear a little bit later.
Friends, there have been some opposing parades in the Ukraine. Pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine have marched dozens of captured troops through the city of Donetsk. It happened as Ukraine celebrated Independence Day, with President Petro Poroshenko pledging to spend $3 billion re-equipping the military in the next 3 years. Steve Rosenberg has this report.
It was an Independence Day parade designed to humiliate Ukraine. In Donetsk, the pro-Russia gunmen that control the city paraded captured Ukrainian soldiers through the streets. The crowd shouted fascists and killers. They threw eggs, tomatoes and bottles at the paraded men. This treatment of prisoners of war was in clear violation of the Geneva Convention. It was a stark contrast to the parade in Kiev. This looked the kind of show you'd see on Red Square in Moscow, a display of defiance and military might to mark Ukrainian Independence Day. President Poroshenko said Ukraine was fighting a real war against foreign aggression. He predicted victory. But in eastern Ukraine, we found less optimism. 10 miles from the front line is Shastya. The name of the town means happiness. At the local hospital, I met 89-year-old Polina Klimovna. A few days ago, an artillery shell destroyed her home. She doesn't know who fired it, the army or the militants. I managed to survive World War II, Polina says. I can't understand why there is another war now.
According to the United Nations, more than 2,000 people have been killed in eastern Ukraine since the violence here began, and hundreds of thousands have fled their homes, victims of a war that shows no sign of ending.
Across town, this Ukrainian battalion showed us round their base. They're armed volunteers. They call themselves the Cinderella Squad. They keep their prisoners down here in the cellar. Everyone into the corner, barks the commander, so the camera can't see your faces.
Friends, that part of the news was in a story from last night. It's also in today's news, but it's a little bit of a repeat. I want to go ahead and go to the ending story I have for us tonight, where the United States joins with the Ukraine in condemning Russia's decision to move lorries carrying aid into eastern Ukraine without permission from Kiev. Now, I'm having a little problem queuing that up for some reason, but let's see if this is it. We may or may not have this story. Let's find out. Here we are.
For more than a week, these lorries have been treated with deep suspicion. Russia had intended its convoy of what it called humanitarian aid to cross into eastern Ukraine several days ago. But Ukraine refused it passage, suspicious the aid on board was in fact weapons for the separatists whom they are fighting. Now progress, with some lorries finally on the move and into this Ukrainian checkpoint, ready for rigorous inspection. The convoy of lorries have been waiting near the Russian town of Kamensky-Shchetinsky, which is near the Ukrainian border. The aid is primarily for the city of Luhansk, which has an estimated population of more than 400,000 people, although it's thought that many have fled due to heavy fighting in recent weeks. The International Red Cross has said the situation in the city is critical, with thousands of people without access to water, electricity and medical supplies. But distributing that aid in a war zone will be challenging. The organisation which will take on that role have insisted on safe passage from all sides.
All right, friends, I'm going to go ahead and come on out of that because that's a story from Friday or Saturday. The story I wanted to play you from today, I'll try to get that for tomorrow, where the U.S. condemns Russia, but Russia is planning on sending another convoy. That's it for tonight, friends. This Monday night edition of Nightcast, God willing and the creek don't rise, we'll be back again tomorrow night, Tuesday night, with the day's current news related to the Bible and prophecy right here on Nightcast. Until next time, your host, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth, saying good night, friends.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on COGTV.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the COGTV.org video archive.